Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and this is the Ultimate Lightning Kit and Guide. This is going to include the Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike one-shot on a 150 character with all the stats and everything you'll need. It'll include the Power Lightning build, and we'll be utilizing Lightning Spear and Ancient Dragon Lightning Spear as well, which were recently, I think, both buffed when they were charged. When they're charged, they're now doing more damage. Lightning Spear is especially good when charged, especially if you're facing something like a dragon that takes additional damage. You can get a lot out of the charged spears now. Lightning is highly buffable, and it's extremely damaging in Elden Ring. It's one of the best things to utilize, and if you can master all of the spells, some of which are relatively late game and early game, we'll get into that in a little bit, you can do immense damage. The damage is actually unreal. We're on journey 3, I think, here at this point, 3 or 4, and the damage you're going to see just with the base build, some buffs that you can do to Placidusax is an example of how much damage this build can truly do. As we go up to him here, you can go up with complete confidence with this build. You'll note that larger targets especially take a ton of damage, and as you saw earlier, me one-shot the Draconic Tree Sentinel as well. Even smaller targets take a lot of damage from this. Malenia is pretty much the sole exception in this build. Outside of that, you can pretty much obliterate anything with Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. And if you're utilizing all of the lightning spells, it gives you a lot of versatility in the game all around, and you'll become incredibly powerful. You'll have one of the most overpowered builds at your disposal, and you'll be absolutely crushing every boss you come across. Interestingly, when I went out to Caelid, I had forgotten from my previous build to switch from the Holy Scorpion Charm back to the Lightning Scorpion Charm. So I was doing 12% less damage before buffs, and I was still doing a lot of damage. If the dragon had just turned a little bit differently, he probably would have been one shot here anyway. And to finish him off with Lightning Spear honestly felt great. Being able to utilize that and then go back to Lightning Spear to do massive damage, especially since they take additional lightning damage and additional damage to their head, it does massive damage as a combination. The gargoyle here can completely get wrecked by Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, as you'll be able to go up behind him, cast, and I've pretty much one-shot him every time I've procced before that. Very, very, very easy to get rid of and obliterate him quickly. He's very easy to cast behind since he doesn't really notice you, and he goes down very, very easily. So, for regular Lightning Spear, that's going to be your base for your mob. I'm going to show you another thing you could do for mob control later, but as far as Lightning Spear, especially with the recent boost for when it's charged, and the fact that I think it's also boosted by the Godfrey Icon and everything else that we have, it does a ton of damage and can pretty much handle all of your smaller enemies, because you're not going to want to go out of your way to cast Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, which is relatively slow on them. So use Lightning Spear and you're going to do a ton of damage. Now, Ancient Dragon Lightning Spear is also really good, but it has a very specific use. The specific use for it really is mob control. If you ever get overcrowded by a bunch of enemies in Elden Ring, or you feel like you're simply outmatched, with the right setup, you can use this for mob control and it works fantastically. This is a very, very, very good mob control incantation, extremely powerful, and it's able to get rid of most of the things around you while also doing a lot of lightning damage and obviously sticking with our build as well. Definitely utilize this if you need help with mobs. This can completely obliterate them, and Ancient Dragon Lightning Spear is a very useful spell in those circumstances. Now, even when you mess up with this whole setup and you're just kind of getting hit or not doing something correctly, which happens to me, it happens to everybody, if you're not using ADLS and you just want to try something different, you have a lot of versatility now, especially with the recent buffs to Lightning Spear. It does a lot of damage. This is on Journey 3 and 4, I think, so everything has more HP, still takes good damage, and we're able to get them down simply by stepping away, healing, and then we're still able to do massive damage with the right setup. And some bosses are a lot easier than others. Some of the early game bosses are really easy to beat with the simple incantations, and some of the later ones aren't going to take nearly as much lightning damage or damage in general from it. But the earlier bosses, you can pretty much use any of the incantations on, and you can do a good amount of damage with them. Now for the low health proc setup, you're going to see everything here. We have the Gravelstone Seal, the Jellyfish Shield, Seppuku to get our health down, the Mushroom Crown, Kindred of Rots, Ritual, well, not the Ritual Sword Talisman, sorry, the Red Feathered Branch Sword, Godfrey Icon, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Lightning Tear, and then Fetid Pots and Boluses. And now this is the Power Lightning build, the safer non-low health proccing one. You can see the difference here with the Dragon Crest. Now we have Ritual Swords Talisman, Godfrey Icon, Lightning Scorpion Charm, and the Lightning Tear. If you want to become a literal god of lightning in Elden Ring, this is what your stats might look like at 150. Faith is what we want to go heavily on. Vigor, I kept at 40. I felt like that was fine. These stats really did me well, and I was able to do a ton of damage with them. I think these are really excellent 150 stats for a lightning build that's mainly faith-based. Now, I want to mention one thing real quick. If you're not subscribed, definitely hit that sub button. If you love overpowered PvE builds or you love Elden Ring in general, definitely hit that subscribe button. There's a ton of great content on this channel, so be sure to check that out and hit the sub button. If you want to be able to one-shot stuff, this is the procking order. I left it up here. You're going to low health proc first, then you're going to proc the black dumpling afterwards. That's going to be the last thing that you do to get your health down at first. Once that's done, we're going to switch back to the mushroom crown because we're going to be poison procking to get that extra 30% damage. Before we do that, we're going to drink our after we do that, we're going to drink our flask. Then use Golden Vow because they're the two longer duration things here. And then we want to tap her off with the FP, use the Jellyfish Shield, Howl Shabribri, and then Fetid Pots, Boluses, and then once we hit, we're going to be able to one-shot the majority of bosses in the game. And at the end, you're going to see Elden Beast and Radagon done on max scaling. I included that at the end. The ceiling on this build is unreal. On the map here is where you're going to get your first lightning incantations, and they're going to be Hone Bolt, Lightning Spear, a couple basic ones. It's an artist shack near that area. There's a knight there. He drops the book. You take it to the pasture, or I think Corin, either one, and you can get those spells fairly early on in the lakes. As I showed earlier, the recent buff to Lightning Spear is a lot of fun. It really does do a lot of damages to regular mobs and such, and the fact that you can throw it, by the way, charging it, enemies can see it, but if you don't charge it, even Malenia will get hit by it. If it's not charged, they tend not to react to it, so that's something to definitely keep note of if you use it. Every time you see me at full health here, that's the Power Lightning build with a little bit of extra buffs. If I do the low health proccing stuff, that's because you get more damage out of the Red Feathered Branch Sword, and obviously the poison proccing with the low health and everything is a great combination to do massive damage. But for the majority of bosses and for the first couple playthroughs, you really don't need anything other than the Power Lightning build. After a couple playthroughs, roughly, probably around between 3 and 5, Journey 3 and 5 or so, stuff starts to get a lot of HP, and when that happens, you might need to buff more to kind of get, if you're going for the one shot. If you're going for a couple casts, though, it really doesn't matter, and it still does massive damage. And killing him with the Lightning Spear at the end was really the way to go. When you're using ADLS, which obviously has a lot of power, if they're ever left with any HP, it might be quicker to just take a step back, use Lightning Spear or Ancient Dragon Lightning Spear, and completely obliterate your target, ending them, because they're probably not going to have much HP left since ADLS is so powerful. As I showed before, even when you mess up or you're not casting right or you're getting hit here and there, you're still going to do massive damage. You're still going to do a substantial amount. It's a really great incantation. It's highly buffable, super powerful, and overall, a lightning build is so much fun. I can't stress that enough. It's an incredibly fun build to use. Faith, in my opinion, is possibly the most fun that you can have in Elden Ring, and everything looks really cool that's faith-based too, and it does massive damage, and you get all the buffs with it, and it does incredible things. As you can tell here, speaking of crazy things, this was on my main character on max scaling in the game. This was Radagon and Elden Beast, and this is really to show you guys the ceiling, how much ceiling this has, how powerful it is. 34,000, I think, something damage. I've done as much in the past. This was on 1.07. I've done this in the past. I think I've gotten 35,000 something damage. He has 31, so it doesn't really matter. But just to show you how much damage you can do with Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike when it's buffed. You can completely obliterate pretty much all the main game bosses. Malenia is really the only side exception that it doesn't work great on. It's a phenomenal spell and can be buffed like crazy. If you thought this was cool or found this helpful or you like Elden Ring in general, there's a ton of great PvE builds on my channel. Definitely hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you guys there.